Please go ahead, sir. We are live now.
Okay, Anup, thank you. So a very, very good afternoon to all of you and very warm welcome for this webinar on changing dynamics of real estate market and future direction of the real estate industry. And to begin with, I request Mr. Ravi Aggarwal, co-chairman of the council, to please welcome the dignitaries. Thank you.
Ravi sir, you are on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Rajora, and a very good evening to everybody. I am honored to be given the privilege to address the welcome address for this very relevant and important topic, changing dynamics of real estate market, the future direction. I'm equally privileged to be accompanied by an esteemed panel of speakers and thought leaders who will share their insights into this ever-changing and evolving real estate situation that we're going through. Let me thank the organizers to make such a great effort to bring a very varied set of panelists who represent different stakeholders from the industry. So I think the audience will clearly gain from the insights from all our panelists. I would like to just start my welcome address by referring to the last 18 months where we have seen an enormous amount of dynamic change and have witnessed substantial changes in the real estate landscape across geographies in India. With two waves already gone past us, India has certainly shown great resilience in withstanding this uncertain period of time. I would like to just cover three main areas, which I think the panelists will, of course, dwell over many more, including these. But clearly, from a more macro and broad parameter, the impact on stakeholders, wherein in the past 18 months, my interactions with each of the stakeholders have shown that each one of the stakeholders have had a huge sense of learning, be it the customers, be it the home buyers on one side, on the other side, be it the investors or the developers. And thirdly, last but not the least, the government and its support machinery for our real estate industry itself. So each of the stakeholders have had immense impact, and we will see some of the insights because we have panelists here representing many of these stakeholders. The second is really what every developer, every user of real estate space has been talking about, is how do we repurpose the space that is being used. Some call it product enhancement. Let me tell you that our interactions with various of the asset classes, be it residential, commercial, warehousing, etc., have shown that the evolution and the transformation phase for their industry within the real estate is quite dynamic and ongoing. And I think it will be good to dwell over these issues. And the third is the soft aspects, what we call the people impact, be it on the commercial side with the workforce who work in these offices or industries or manufacturing units, on the residential side, the families that were impacted due to work from home, etc. How do they want us to use the space and to provide the space in terms of what are the flexibilities, what are the amenities that have been coming about. And as we have seen by interactions, that the service orientation of providing these amenities and conveniences will need to be looked at more closely. The future trend of all these three impacts is very clear. Wellness is coming out to be a very important aspect, including health and safety of not only the workforce, but also of the real estate, the building itself. And very soon we will have dynamic and consistent monitoring of the health of our buildings and structures. The second future trend which comes out from these interactions I've seen is the hotelization of real estate, what I call, in a way, workforce on demand. The gig economy is here. There will be freelancing and there would be workforce which will be available on demand. Stay on demand, be it co-living, be it hotels or be it other service apartments. And finally, work on demand, be it managed offices or co-working. So the hotelization of real estate is something I think the real estate is looking at. And finally, I think as developers, since I'm representing the developer group, I think real estate for us, more than a development, is now going to be as a service provider, and how we are going to make sure that the users of our real estate are eventually going to get the flexibility and the convenience going forward. These are some of the areas I'm sure on macro basis will be dwelled upon going forward. I heartily welcome all the esteemed panelists, and I would like to now hand over to Mr. Himanshu Goyal, who will moderate this session going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi ji. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Welcome on this wonderful evening where we have galaxy of speakers today and who will be deliberating, putting up their mind and sharing their views on changing dynamics of real estate market, the future direction. Friends, we have seen real estate being considered again as the real investment by all the stakeholders, and that's why the topic today drives importance, that what changes or what is the latest happenings across the real estate market which will help us decide the future. So with this thought, friends, it may be taxation, it may be government policies, it may be short-term or long-term thought process, it may be work from home, it may be online classes, it may be easy financing to the home buyers or the occupants, users, it may be technology, it may be availability of funds to developers, transparency, joint development agreements, availability of resources, whatnot. And we have a super panel to discuss all these things. In this line, I'd like to first invite Shri Ravi Aggarwal ji, co-founder and managing director of SignatureGlobal Group, one of the group which has been really living the dream of the Honorable PM, maybe the largest in terms of affordable housing. Ravi ji doesn't need any introduction as such. Ravi sir, over to you for your deliberation, please.
के लिए पहले तो इतने एक्सट्रीम पैनल का हिस्सा बनने के लिए एसोचैम का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। सिग्नेचर ग्लोबल ऑलवेज एसोचैम के चीजों में कोई भी एंडेवर करेंगे, हम लोग ऑलवेज साथ में रहने वाले। मैं इस पर जो डायनामिक्स की चेंज करने की बात हो रही है, कि हाउसिंग में कैसे डायनामिक्स चेंज हो रहे हैं, उसके बारे में कुछ अपने थोड़े से विचार में रखना चाहूँगा। मैं मानता हूँ कि पेंडेमिक जब जैसे ही आया, हम 2 बार पेंडेमिक को झेल चुके हैं, तो हमारे जीने का सिर्फ तरीका नहीं बदला है, हमारी जो सोच है और जिंदगी की और जो हमारा नजरिया है, आई थिंक सो वो भी बदल गया है। हमारी लाइफ की प्रायोरिटीज शायद चेंज हो गई हैं। आज से पहले हमारी शायद प्रायोरिटी, जब हमारी 2 बार हमने जब पेंडेमिक नहीं झेला था, तो हमारी लाइफ की प्रायोरिटी, जो देखने का जो नज़रिया है लाइफ को, वो अलग था। और आज जो लोग पेंडेमिक से गुजर चुके हैं, उन लोगों का नज़रिया और हम सब लोगों का नज़रिया उनको देख के चेंज हो चुका है। मेरा ये मानना है कि अब लोग सिर्फ सस्ता घर नहीं चाहते, लोग अच्छा घर भी चाहते हैं। और जो उनकी ज़रूरत है, उनकी डायनेमिक्स के हिसाब से उनकी ज़रूरत जो चेंज हो रही है, उन सबको एड्रेस करता हूँ मैं। इसमें आज जो रियल एस्टेट में पिछले 2 साल में जो चेंज आया है अक्रॉस द बोर्ड, पूरे इंडिया में जो डिमांड एकदम चेंज आया है, वो डिमांड बहुत ज़्यादा एक अलग टाइप का डिमांड क्रिएट हो गया। क्योंकि जो लोगों ने पेंडेमिक के दौरान सहा, जो लोग आज किराए पे घर पे रहते थे, उन लोगों ने उसको जिया, समझा कि आज अपने घर होने की उनकी मायने क्या है, ज़रूरत क्या है, और किस तरह का घर चाहिए वो भी उन्होंने डिफाइन कर पाए कि उस घर में क्या होना चाहिए। जो आज पेंडेमिक के दौरान उन्होंने चीज़ों को, मुसीबतों को, ये चीज़ों को झेला, उससे एक नीड बेस्ड हाउसिंग क्रिएट हुई, उसकी डिमांड क्रिएट हुई, और आज वही डिमांड पूरी मार्केट को ड्राइव कर रही है। और ऑलवेज कस्टमर की नीड ही मार्केट को ड्राइव करने वाली है, हमारी विश लिस्ट या किसी की विश लिस्ट नहीं ड्राइव करने वाली है। जो कस्टमर की ज़रूरत है, आई थिंक सो, वो ही मार्केट को ड्राइव करने वाली है। इसमें मैं 4 बातें कहना चाहूँगा, जो बड़ी-बड़ी बातें। एक, ग्रीन सस्टेनेबल जो लिविंग है, जो ग्रीन लिविंग सस्टेनेबल लिविंग है, उसकी जिक्र करना चाहूँगा। दूसरी, जो हाउसिंग है उसकी जो कॉस्ट है या जो भी उसका टिकट साइज है, वो कस्टमर की ज़रूरत है, लेकिन उसकी पॉकेट को भी एड्रेस करना चाहिए। जो उसकी ईएमआई है, जो भी उसकी अर्निंग है, उस ईएमआई को पे कर सके, वो एड्रेस कर सके। तीसरा, जो हाउसिंग का सेगमेंट है, वो टेक्नोलॉजी और उसमें ऑटोमेशन का उसके अंदर रोल होना चाहिए। क्योंकि आज जो वर्क फ्रॉम होम का जो कल्चर आया, उसके अंदर टेक्नोलॉजी का रोल, जो घर से लेकर काम कर रहे हैं लोग, उनके अंदर बहुत ज़्यादा रोल हो गया। और आने वाले अगले, क्योंकि हम जब भी अभी हाउसिंग को डिज़ाइन करते हैं, वो आज के लिए एड्रेस नहीं करते, वो अगले 10 से 20 साल और 25 साल का एक विजन लेकर करते हैं। और जिस तरह से हम टेक्नोलॉजी में ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन आ रहा है, हमें टेक्नोलॉजी, जो जितने भी हम जो घर बनाने वाले हैं, उसको हमें एड्रेस करना पड़ेगा। एक, जो पहले से रियल एस्टेट में ऑलवेज रहा है, क्योंकि टाइमली डिलीवरी, आई थिंक सो, ये मोस्ट क्रिटिकल चीज़ रियल एस्टेट में तब भी थी, आज भी है और कल भी रहने वाली है। क्योंकि आज जिस भी कस्टमर को हम लोग, जो भी चीज़ हम प्रोडक्ट सेल कर रहे हैं, उसकी एस्पिरेशन को भी वो उसकी एक एनालिसिस करता है कि मुझे, आज मैंने अप्लाई किया है, मेरी ये ज़रूरत, क्योंकि तब तक वो रेंट पे रह रहा है या कहीं बहुत अलग घर में जो उसकी ज़रूरत पूरी नहीं कर रहा, उसके अंदर रह के उसके अंदर सर्वाइव करने का प्रयास कर रहा है, तो उसको टाइमली डिलीवरी मिलनी चाहिए, जो उसको आपने प्रॉमिस किया है। एक चौथी चीज़ और ऐड करना चाहूँगा कि एक एनालिसिस निकल गया है कि भाई आज पीछे काफ़ी सारे डेवलपर्स एनसीएलटी और इन सब चीज़ों को फेस कर चुके हैं, और अच्छे बड़े नाम फेस कर चुके हैं। तो आज एक नया ट्रेंड डेवलप हो रहा है कि आज कस्टमर उन डेवलपर्स के यहाँ साथ में रहना चाहता है, जो बैलेंस शीट वाइज स्ट्रांग हो, बैक्ड बाय इंस्टीट्यूशंस हों, ताकि उसको एश्योरिटी आ सके कि ये प्रॉपर कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस से काम करेंगे, तो उसका घर टाइम से मिल पाएगा। और जिसके पास वो डिपॉजिट कर रहा है, क्योंकि आज जब वो घर पे जमा करा रहा है, तो आज तो अलॉटमेंट मनी भी जमा करा रहा है, तब शायद तो वो प्लान पे ही घर बेचे जा रहे हैं। डिलीवरी तो होने में 2 साल, 3 साल और 4 साल, जो भी पीरियड उसने प्रॉमिस किया हुआ है, उसमें जो लगता है। मैं चारों पॉइंट को छोटा-छोटा 2-2 मिनट करके आपको एड्रेस करना चाहूँगा। ग्रीन सस्टेनेबल लिविंग। आज हम रियल एस्टेट डेवलप पूरी कर रहे हैं, तो ज़ाहिर है एनवायरनमेंट को इस तरह से एक लिविंग जनरेट की जाए कि हम एनवायरनमेंट को मिनिमम नुकसान पहुंचाएं। और बिकॉज ना, तो हम पूरी डेवलपर कम्युनिटी हैं, पूरी और डेवलपमेंट आगे बहुत शहरों की जरूरी है, अर्बनाइजेशन भी जरूरी है, लेकिन एनवायरनमेंट का साथ में ख्याल जरूरी है। तो वी एज ए ग्रुप आल्सो बिलीव इन दिस थिंग, और ग्रीन लिविंग में, ताकि हम कस्टमर को ये एजुकेट कर सकें कि ग्रीन लिविंग उनके लिए कितनी फ़ायदेमंद है। उनके घर के अंदर एनर्जी सेविंग, एक जो घर बनाते वक्त हम लोग जो वाटर सेविंग और एनर्जी सेविंग कर रहे हैं, जो वेस्ट प्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं, उसकी प्रोसेसिंग कैसे होगी, और वो उसके घर के लिए, उसकी आगे की लाइफ के लिए, क्योंकि एनवायरनमेंट का वो भी हिस्सा है। और जो हम कंस्ट्रक्शन के टाइम में जो वेस्ट प्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं या जो मटेरियल इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, वो एनवायरनमेंट को कितना नुकसान पहुंचा रहा है या नहीं पहुंचा रहा है। ताकि इसलिए गवर्नमेंट को कुछ आईजीबीसी ऑलरेडी सिस्टम में है, ऑलरेडी और भी ग्रीन अथॉरिटीज हैं। अब तो एक इंटरनेशनल में तो एज सर्टिफिकेशन भी एक चलता है। मैं ये कहना चाहूँगा कि गवर्नमेंट को कुछ ऐसे स्टेप्स लेने चाहिए इसके अंदर। प्रेजेंटली जब ग्रीन बिल्डिंग बनाते हैं तो उसके अंदर कोई एक्स्ट्रा एफआर गवर्नमेंट देती है, उस एफआर को आई थिंक सो बढ़ाया जाना चाहिए ताकि ग्रीन बिल्डिंग को और बढ़ावा हो, क्योंकि आगे डेवलपमेंट बहुत पेंडिंग है, अर्बनाइजेशन बहुत पेंडिंग है और एनवायरनमेंट को नुकसान ना हो, साथ में हाउसिंग भी बने। तो उसके लिए एफआर को थोड़ा सा बढ़ा के, एक दूसरा जो हाउसिंग ग्रीन लिविंग को सर्टिफाई कर रही है उसके अंदर एनएचबी के तरफ से कुछ ऐसी गाइडलाइंस इस तरह के आने चाहिए कि जो होम लोन उनको प्रोवाइड किए जाएं उनको कुछ 25 से 50 बेसिस पॉइंट कम में किए जाएं ताकि उस ग्रीन लिविंग को बढ़ावा मिल सके। होम लोन हालांकि बहुत बॉटम रेट पे इस समय आज तक के लोएस्ट पे ट्रेड कर रहे हैं और ये हर एक कस्टमर के लिए एक बड़ी अपॉर्चुनिटी है, लेकिन साथ साथ उनके अंदर अगर हम कुछ ऐसा प्रेजेंट कर पाएँ कि एक बड़ा प्लेटफॉर्म एसोचैम का है और अगर हम इस बात को पहुंचा पाएँ तो आई थिंक सो इससे हमें ग्रीन लिविंग को बढ़ावा मिलने वाला है। एक जो डेवलपर्स भी डेवलपमेंट कर रहे हैं ग्रीन बिल्डिंग में, एफएआर के अलावा और भी किसी तरह का गवर्नमेंट से सपोर्ट आ सके तो वो एक प्रेजेंट किया जाना चाहिए और एक इसको हम एज ए एसोचैम प्लेटफॉर्म को अगर हम प्रेजेंट कर सकें तो आई थिंक सो अच्छा एक मोबिलाइजेशन आ सकता है और कस्टमर्स की लाइफ पे जो इम्पैक्ट आने वाला है, आज कस्टमर को हमें इस बात पे एजुकेशन करना पड़ेगा कि आज जब वो ग्रीन बिल्डिंग के घर लेंगे तो उनकी एनर्जी सेविंग 20 से 30% कम होने वाली है, वाटर सेविंग भी 20 से 30% आगे उसका बिल कम आने वाला है, एक एनवायरनमेंट को भी फायदा होने वाला है। एक तीसरा एक और कस्टमर्स को हमें एक एजुकेट करने की जरूरत है कि अनऑर्गेनाइज्ड डेवलपमेंट से ऑर्गेनाइज्ड डेवलपमेंट में एज एनवायरनमेंट कितना फायदा आने वाला है और उसके लिए लाइफ में कितना फायदा आने वाला है। अभी आज से पहले भी लो राइज डेवलपमेंट, बिल्डर फोर डेवलपमेंट हो रही थी, लेकिन उसके अंदर गेटेड कम्युनिटी लिविंग और कंप्लीट कम्युनिटी लिविंग वो वाला सेगमेंट पूरा अनएड्रेस रहता था। वो आइसोलेशन में एक प्लॉट्स पे डेवलपमेंट रहता था, उसके अंदर ना तो ग्रीन बिल्डिंग वाली चीजें होती थी और ना ही एनर्जी सेविंग और कंप्लीट कम्युनिटी लिविंग। आज कोरोना के अंदर हमने उन चीजों को देखा है कि कम्युनिटी का मतलब क्या होता है। अगर एक गेटेड कम्युनिटी में सेफ्टी गाइडलाइंस फॉलो करते हुए अगर हम लोग उसको पूरा एड्रेस करते हैं, एक पूरी कम्युनिटी, एक गेटेड कम्युनिटी लिविंग है तो उसके अंदर हम सेफ्टी गाइडलाइंस बढ़िया कर पाते हैं, हेल्थ सेफ्टी बढ़िया कर पाते हैं और बाकी अमेनिटीज जो भी हैं वो विद इन गेटेड कम्युनिटी अवेलेबल रहती हैं। तो उससे कोरोना का टाइम बढ़ने के बावजूद भी उसको आइसोलेशन फील नहीं होता। नहीं तो क्या है, अगर फ्लोर लिविंग पे सिंपल भी रह रहा है वो, अगर दिल्ली में डेवलपमेंट देखें तो दिल्ली में जो फ्लोर लिविंग में लोग रह रहे हैं वो अपने एक सीमित प्लॉट की डेवलपमेंट के अंदर सीमित रहे, सिर्फ उस फ्लोर के अंदर सीमित रहे, हेल्थ सेफ्टी उनके एड्रेस नहीं हो पाई। दूसरी चीज मैंने पॉइंट डिस्कस किया कि विद इन पॉकेट, आई थिंक सो जो डेवलपमेंट अब कस्टमर्स वो डेवलपर्स को लाने की जरूरत है। जब हम टिकट को क्रिएट करें, मतलब कि क्या कॉस्ट कस्टमर बियर कर सकता है, वो हमें जरूर एड्रेस करनी चाहिए कि वो उस रेंज में हो कि कस्टमर उसको अफोर्ड कर सके। साइजिंग में ऑप्टिमाइजेशन और एफिशिएंसी जो है वो वर्किंग करने की जरूरत है। वो मोस्ट एफिशिएंट हाउसिंग विद कंप्लीट सॉल्यूशंस, उसकी जरूरत की जो चीजें हैं वो सारी उसको मिल सकें। एक टेक्नोलॉजी ऑटोमेशन के अंदर जो बात जहां तक कही जाएगी, क्या हो रहा है कि पेंडेमिक से पहले वर्क फ्रॉम होम का कल्चर ना के बराबर हुआ करता था, शायद सोच में भी नहीं था लोगों की, लेकिन पेंडेमिक के बाद एक बड़ी कम्युनिटी वर्क फ्रॉम होम से काम कर रही है, सेक्शन से काम कर रही है। इवन कुछ कंपनीज ने तो लाइफ टाइम के लिए भी और या 5 साल और 10 साल और 25 साल तक के लिए होम लोन डिक्लेयर, अपना वर्क फ्रॉम होम डिक्लेयर कर दिया है। तो एक इस तरह की एक बड़ी क्लास क्रिएट हो गई है जो क्लास को घर से काम करना है। लेकिन उसके अंदर मैं एक बात कहना चाहूँगा, जब हम वर्क फ्रॉम होम करते हैं तो आपकी पर्सनल एंड प्रोफेशनल लाइफ दोनों से कंप्रोमाइज़ होता है, क्योंकि आपकी दोनों लाइफ मर्ज हो जाती हैं। तो इसके अंदर कुछ ऐसी चीज़ें करने की ज़रूरत है कि अगर आप उसको घर के नीचे कोई ऑफ़िस दे पाएँ, घर के पास ऑफ़िस दे पाएँ। हमने कुछ प्रोजेक्ट में अभी एक्सपेरिमेंट किया है। हमने वर्क फ्रॉम होम के लिए वहाँ पर उनके इमीडिएट घर के नीचे ही उनको ऑफ़िस की प्लेस जो फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट उनको हमने देने का प्रयास किया है, ताकि उनकी पर्सनल और जो प्रोफ़ेशनल लाइफ़ है वो आपस में मर्ज ना हो। डेडिकेटेडली उस जैसे हमने जो प्रोजेक्ट में इम्प्लीमेंट किया है वो लो राइज डेवलपमेंट है। उसके अंदर हमने बेसमेंट, स्टिल्ट और प्लस 4 फ्लोर ये वाला मॉडल किया है, जिसके अंदर जो हम नीचे वाले 3 फ्लोर हैं उनको हम ऑफ़िस बेसमेंट में प्रोवाइड करते हैं, ताकि और वो प्रॉपर फर्निश्ड ऑफ़िस प्रोवाइड करते हैं, ताकि उन्हें किसी पर्सन को बाहर से मीटिंग के लिए भी बुलाना है, तो उनकी दोनों लाइफ़ कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ ना हो। और आज हम लोग शायद काफ़ी लोग पहले जितने भी सेमिनार होते थे, इनके जितने भी वेबिनार, आज वो सब सेमिनार वेबिनार में तब्दील हो गए हैं सारे के सारे, क्योंकि हम घर से काम कर रहे हैं। तो इस तरह के चेंजेस जो कस्टमर की ज़रूरत के हिसाब से आ रहे हैं, और उसके लिए टेक्नोलॉजी पे आपको, क्योंकि इंटरनेट की जो बैंडविड्थ की स्पीड है और ये सारी चीज़ें, स्मार्ट होम्स होने चाहिए, ये सारी चीज़ों को हमें एड्रेस आगे बढ़ के करना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि ज़रूरत है वक़्त की। टाइमली डिलीवरी ये अनसेड है, ये ऑलवेज़ सबका कस्टमर का पॉइंट रहा है, क्योंकि पूरी आज जब से रेरा पिक्चर में आया है, रेरा ने आके बहुत बढ़िया प्रोविज़निंग जो 70-30 की है, उससे आई थिंक सो एक बहुत बड़ा फ़िल्टर लगा कि हाँ भई, पहले आप कस्टमर को मकान बनाने पे फ़ोकस कीजिए, उसको मकान बनाइए, टाइम से उसको डिलीवरी दीजिए, आप 70% के फंड का फर्स्ट क्लास यूटिलाइज़ेशन कीजिए, आप उसको टाइमली डिलीवरी करके उसको घर सौंपिए, ताकि क्योंकि हमारा विज़न और कस्टमर का विज़न सेम होना चाहिए इस मामले में, और वो उसमें मैच करना चाहिए, क्योंकि वो भी ऑलरेडी रेंट पे रह रहा है या अपने अदर कंप्रोमाइज़्ड होम्स में रह रहा है। आई थिंक सो उसको टाइमली डिलीवरी देना, वो हमारी पूरी सोसाइटी, पूरी कम्युनिटी जो हमारी बिल्डर की कम्युनिटी है, इसके लिए बहुत क्रेडिबल, और रेरा ने आके ऐसा बहुत बढ़िया काम किया है, उससे हमें बेंचमार्किंग मिली है। और अनलेवरेज्ड डेवलपर्स, मतलब कि जिनकी बैलेंस शीट स्ट्रॉन्ग है, थोड़ा-सा जो भी कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस पे आई थिंक सो वी एज डेवलपर नीड टू मोर फोकस, बिकॉज हम लोग किसी ना किसी कस्टमर का मनी ले रहे हैं और वो हमें ट्रस्ट करके मनी दे रहा है। तो वी एज डेवलपर्स नीड, हमें कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस पे और फोकस करना चाहिए, कंप्लायंस पे और फोकस करना चाहिए, ताकि जो हम कस्टमर से मनी ले रहे हैं हम रिस्पॉन्सिबली उसका यूटिलाइज करें, कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस के अंदर उसका यूटिलाइजेशन करें, और उसकी विशेष जो हैं और जो हमने इसको प्रॉमिस किया हुआ है वो हम पूरा कर सकें। आई थिंक सो हमें कस्टमर की जितनी भी नीड ज़रूरत के हिसाब से चेंज हो रही है, उसको बार-बार एड्रेस करते हुए जाना पड़ेगा। थैंक्स सो मच। ओवर टू हिमांशु।
Thank you, Ravi ji, for a panoramic view of the residential industry. Friends, we now like to invite Mr. Amit Grover. Amit ji is an executive director of DLF Office Businesses. Welcome, Mr. Grover. Amit ji, am I audible?
Yeah, hi, Himanshu, how are you? As Ravi said,
Hi. We appreciate, sir, you are on the way to catch your flight, and you have taken out time to address people at large. Amit ji, you are a seasoned commercial real estate professional, I believe, who has an experience of over 25 years. Ravi ji has given a holistic view of the entire residential housing industry, emphasizing that the houses need to be made pocket-friendly, green, sustainable, technology-oriented, timely delivery, and the developers need to be strong. What do you think, with your experience in terms of commercial real estate, what should be seen by the developers across the country in the near future, or maybe for a longer time of 5 to 10 years, and how this commercial real estate should be looked into, and what preparation should be made to make it fruitful for the developers.
Thank you, Himanshu, and a pleasure, Raviji, hearing you. It's always a pleasure hearing your views, and I think the views keep on refreshing and always so futuristic. So learn a lot, and then thank you, ASSOCHAM, for giving the opportunity and be with the great panel on this. So I think on commercial, broadly speaking, a lot has changed. I think in all our lives, including our the entire life, last 100 years, I don't think no one has heard about this work from home in the entire industrial revolution and the evolution of the workspace in the last 60, 70 years, ever since the formation of cities and the central business district and the whole emergence of cities have come up. So this is something like come up in a different way. And I keep saying in real estate terms, last 70 years or so, when the cities have grown, cities have been the epicenter for employment, for driving the economic, of the country. And within the city, the central business district used to be those mega centers which used to attract employees from tier 2 cities, make it aspirational. People want to have higher educations, to work in those larger class buildings with multinational companies, and that's been a great trend, where the sense of achievement was always linked with whether you're working with the top cities in India, Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, etc., or you're working in the top cities globally. It could be London, Boston, New York, elsewhere, and the sense of achievement used to come with the visible factor of the skyline of New York or Bombay or other things. So I think in the recent world, few of those concepts have been revisited. That why work, why go to office, and how the work from home and work from office will coexist and kind of create value to the core human experience. And I think increasingly the gadgets are enabling that to work from anywhere. So therefore, the hybrid structure is evolving. Having said that, we have to be careful that a lot of talk of this hybrid structure is, or somewhat, may be relevant for the international world and may be less relevant for India, simply because a cost of operations hota hai, which as a real estate office as a cost of operations internationally is in the range of 30 to 35%. In India, as a cost of operations of an office is about 5%. So from internationally, a lot of this work from home and hybrid has been driven also from a cost saving perspective. In India, there are two factors. One, the cost itself is a 5% of the total cost. Second, we are the global back office center of the world, where our employment is not, it's a different category of employment which India gets. We get employments through large outsourcing contracts, which are in large volume, where on an average, every outsourcing contract requires hiring 500 people minimum to, and then go up to 2,000 people and sometimes 5,000 people. So basically, you're looking at very large volume of people. And to drive productivity from such large volume of people, it's important to have them at a certain place, to drive a culture, to drive a consistency on the thought process, to drive that collaboration which is required to work out solutions and that kind of innovation out of the new project. So we believe that yes, the people will have the flexibility to work from home. Having said that, the larger sense of the population or a working population in mega cities will come back to work. Having said that, the workplaces will not be the same as before. They'll have to be upgraded to make it more engaging. More amenities will have to be delivered. More, well-being, employee well-being will have to be looked at. Safety at workplace will have to be completely looked at. There is a lot more detailing. And the whole experience level has to be substantially upgraded so that when the employees come to work in an office building or in an office complex, they feel that there is something which they are going, and creating much more value than what they would, while sitting at home. So in true sense, जैसे आज हम खाना खाते हैं तो हम घर पे भी खा सकते हैं और रेस्टोरेंट में भी जाते हैं. So that's how I think the offices will create value, that you will be able to work from home, but there will be a certain experiential value which the offices complex will create, and which will make offices relevant, provided they are very experiential. So the offices industry is going for a big change in making the whole office complexes very experiential. Another area which will make the office grow, even with the pandemic impact, is thanks to the great internet. Globally, there's a lot of work. Companies are moving towards more digitization, and you would have heard of the term for digital transformation, and also work on artificial intelligence and IoT. Thankfully, the India has great and endless talent on these platforms, and therefore, more and more outsourcing assignments are coming to India on these domain. We've heard a lot of hiring happening in top cities already. You would have seen in the last month or so, big companies announcing some big hiring plans. Right now they're doing virtual hiring, but at the same time they know that they have to open up offices soon, because a lot of virtual hiring is not able to make the employees connect to the culture and to their bosses, peers, everything. So right now, the way we look at it is, yes, right now, most companies are waiting to see that the third wave, thankfully, should not have an impact. At the same time, by October, most of the younger employees, which will go through the second shot of vaccination, and post the second shot, they will complete their at least first 15 days of quarantine. And then we would see the confidence of return to work at a much higher level from October onwards. And at the same time, the other new emergence, new technologies, and other areas is kind of creating more business for India. So a couple of good points which we are working on. Some of the representations to keep the office businesses relevant and make it more attractive. We've made a few representations to the government, and I'll use this platform to restate more so for the SEZs. We've seen how in SEZs post the sunset clause, we've represented to the government that allow both the international business and domestic business for the IT companies to coexist from the SEZs. This is one of the important agenda we want to voice out in various forums to the government, because Indian IT companies today have gone big in size. They are consistently getting great work from the international offices and doing great dollar revenue. But at the same time, they are also servicing the domestic market. The Indian top companies, TCS, Infosys, and a lot of other companies are also working for Indian companies, Indian government. And therefore, we want the flexibility in the SEZs to be able to allow both the dollar billing as well as Indian billing to coexist. We've represented for the sections where there is a India billing. Let the taxes benefit not be given, which is okay, but it will be important to coexist so that there remains into one ecosystem. So that's one request I'd like to make through this ASSOCHAM platform. There, in other areas, just to summarize, our overall office business, as said, will have to be made far more experiential. In true sense, it is moving from a B2B business to a B2C business, where every employee coming to an office building is a customer. It's not just the top bosses who are the customer, and every employee coming into the office building will be customer, and therefore the entire the kind of experience level has to be focused towards every employee, so that they come and enjoy the workforce, enjoy the amenities, use technology as a platform to make them access the amenities, access the buildings, invite their friends and families to office buildings, so that becomes like more of a commercial hub and the epicenter of not just work, but I would say a work and a kind of a social life as an integration. Very much similar to what we have seen in Cyber City Gurgaon, where Cyber Hub, when it was introduced, how it's changed the flavor of Cyber City Gurgaon, where employees come in the evenings, their families comes in, and the weekends they kind of come there. So it's no more just a workplace; it's a work and a social enabler. We're doing a similar initiative in Chennai. We're doing similar initiative in Hyderabad. And I think that will be a flavor, where how the office buildings become the hub of center of attraction. And I do believe, although there is talk about tier 2 cities and all that stuff, I do believe the cities and the commercial business districts, which have been driving the economic growth over the years and have been the major magnet of driving a lot of immigration into the bigger cities and driving aspirations with the younger workforce, that will remain relevant and will continue to be the driver of economies, not only in India and the world over. So these are my thoughts. So thank you for giving the opportunity, sir.
Thanks, Amitji, for sharing the risks associated and important aspects which need to be taken care for keeping the pace of the commercial real estate market. You have created a hope, sir, that the sector would not only be alive, but would be definitely bouncing back soon. Thank you so much. Friends, now we have Shri Manish Shah with us. He's MD and CEO, Godrej Housing Finance. We welcome you, sir. Sir, we have talked about residential housing, commercial real estate from the developer's perspective. But I think your role is the most important, because I believe that everything is solely dependent on money available with our buyers. So you have a 22 years experience in retail financial services in diverse businesses such as secured and unsecured lending, etc. So, sir, what is your view in the times to come? Will our buyers be getting quick money from you, and the developers would be, their burden would be eased out to just develop and sell the product? Please.
Thanks. Thanks, Himanshu. I wish it was as easy as that. But before I jump into it, thank you for having me, and good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here. I have just a few points to make, and I'll try and cover them quickly. To start with, it's always daunting, it's challenging to talk about a topic that talks about what the future is going to look like. The last 1.5 years has taught us anything. It has taught us that, how well we manage in the present in itself is such a big challenge. How we are going to build the future, it's going to take some doing. But just from our perspective, and let me kind of wear a few hats here. Firstly, as a group, as Godrej Group, we are very bullish on this space, as you all know, across Godrej Properties, Godrej Fund Management, and now Godrej Housing. So as a group, we are very bullish on the sector, and we are backing this up by where our investments are going. And a lot of this bullishness comes from a few factors. Overall, it comes from just general levels of penetration, housing, ownership, home ownership. Specifically from our perspective, now wearing the financer's lens only, there are a few things that make us very bullish. One is, in general, just the headroom for growth. Today, if you look at our mortgage to GDP ratio, if you look at any of these coverage ratios, we are at half of most of our eastern neighbors. Forget the, at 10%, we are half of economies like Thailand, Malaysia, China, let alone, the Western world, where levels are much higher, and we'll take, it'll take some doing for us to get there. But the point is, A, there is plenty of headroom for growth. And B, now coming sort of closer to the world in which we operate in, what makes us most bullish actually is affordability. Affordability, as defined as what your EMI or your mortgage payment is as a ratio of your total income, now is at a 20-year high. And it's driven by three things. And hopefully all of these three, continue to play out over the near future at least. One, from a property prices perspective, they've either been stable in some cases declining, but you certainly haven't seen steep price hikes. And therefore, from an affordability perspective, factor number one is just property prices. Second is, even, you might argue that incomes haven't kept pace, income growth hasn't kept pace, but they have risen steadily in most of the organized sector. Last but not the least, and the place that we come from is, this is the lowest interest rates have been in most of our lifetimes. Forget in our working lives. These rates of interest, the difference between what banks borrow at, the difference at which, from a repo rate versus what lenders give money out, especially for people buying homes, is the lowest it has ever been. So these three things have driven affordability to the best it's ever been. When you combine this now with the fact that unsold home inventories have been moving much faster than it was a couple of years ago, and all of the impact that COVID has had, the emotional impact of wanting to own your own home, and the actual practical impact, the people before me spoke about this, right? You want the security of your own home, you want the space. I mean, and all of us have experienced this, a house that seemed large enough when everybody went to school, work, suddenly doesn't feel that big anymore. Suddenly you feel like jaga kam pad rahi hai. So all these things have come together, and we see, so offtake most people on this call, know this much better than I do, whether it's, home sales, offtake, the proportion that's financed. What we find very interesting is, the geographies in which homes are selling more. So for example, we see quite a few instances of the trade-off where I'm saying, as a buyer, I want a bigger home and I'm willing to move a little further away for it. Or we want to upgrade the size of our home and we want a certain kind of community, because in COVID, we've realized what it means to have a high quality gated community, or, what I need from my home has changed. Where we are very excited and where we see there is a lot of opportunity, and I think Aggarwal ji mentioned this, when he spoke. From a wanting to buy a home, a need to buy a home, from an interest in upgrading, that is without exception and without doubt been established. The challenge, however, is I need as a buyer to be able to afford the home. Now that hasn't entirely been solved. At the end of the day, do you and I, Himanshu, do you and I like a bigger house? Do we like a better community? Of course, the answer to all of this is yes. Do I have the ability to cut that check here and now to make it happen? That's the challenge. So there's two things that we are seeing, and we've been working on. One is, you have financing, and to your point now, let me try and answer the challenge that you posed when I started. You, as the financer, our job is to make it possible for me to buy this home. The total cost of ownership. So I think as buyers of real estate, this has probably been an industry the most obsessed with total ticket size, per square foot price kya hai, as opposed to what does it cost for me to own this property. And especially in cases where people invest in projects, people buy homes under construction, affordability is even more challenging often, right? I live on rent today, or I pay an EMI for an existing home. I wish to upgrade. I'm clear on the choice of developer, community, all of this I know. But I have got 2 years, 3 years where I may have to make double payments. How are you as financiers and developers partnering to make this purchase easy for me, make it possible for me? So I'll give you an example. In Bangalore, we worked to launch a project where we basically made the entire pre-possession installment as low as 3,500 rupees. You can, where we're saying you should be able to buy a home cheaper than it is to get an iPhone. After you have moved into the house, after you have stopped paying rent, after you have stopped paying your other EMI, then you can get onto real. So this balance between, cost of ownership, you can't just simply say everything will be paid later, nothing until possession, because the buyer is not stupid. At the end of the day, you're taking this period, you're adding interest to my cost of ownership. So it's not enough to address only EMIs. It's not enough to address only cash flow. You have to address both cash flow and total cost of ownership. Both have to fit my budget. So one is just everything you're doing for affordability. Can you make it easier for me to pay? Can I start small, go higher, so on and so forth? The second is really can you take the pain out of this whole process? When you look at financing, especially when you look at home buyers, no home buyer is really interested, to spend more time than absolutely necessary on the loan itself. The loan is merely a means to an end to get my home. My interest is in the home. Can the loan be painless? And COVID, if anything, taught us that. So, as an industry, we are very used to. When you look at unsecured borrowing, people have moved to being able to do it end-to-end digitally. But the home buying journey was always imagined that, you have to meet multiple times. A buyer is going to come multiple times to the site. You will meet them for, paper A, and then you will meet them for signing X. This, especially in April, May, when we were all, not just as a country affected, we saw it, team members being affected personally. Where we accelerated this process in saying, why can't we have an end-to-end presenceless process? And so we were able to turn that around, having seen our frontline suffering. I think the one change that corporate India and all of us realized that work from home needs to work for more people than just senior management. Senior management working from home is very easy to do. Everybody can manage it. It doesn't take a lot of technological innovation or brilliance, really. But allowing your frontline to work from home, now that's different. So we worked on saying, why can't the loan be done end to end without ever needing to meet a customer? Can I verify your score online? Can I do a meeting like this? So Himanshu is in front of me. Himanshu wants to a loan. You've identified your property. Why can't I move beyond simply sanctioning? Can I do a soft sanction? Can I do a hard sanction? And then finally, we move to saying, why can't I disburse to the developer? We've done the verification. We've pulled income documents. And we found now that you can do this loan without ever meeting a person. If certain authorities don't accept digital documents like power of attorney, for example, they can be couriered. If Blue Dart can bring your credit card home, which is an instrument that can be used to spend, they can also transfer, transport and courier, a power of attorney to you and back. So I think as we look forward, we've seen, the way other assets have been revolutionized. I mean, borrowing from an extremely successful, if you look at what Bajaj Finance did to consumer durables, this ability to go to a store to what you thought was a 32-inch TV and then say, actually, wait a minute, yaar, ye 60 inches acha lag raha hai, it's available for 3,000 rupees a month. And this decision can be done before I leave the store. Why not? So if you can do that for an iPhone, for a television, why haven't we done this enough for homes in saying whether it's 80 lakhs, 1 crore, 1.2 crore, what is it today, what is it tomorrow, and what is it when you live in it? Why can't we look at this as this is what it costs for you to live in this house? So as we look forward, I think this packaging it, making it easier for a customer, affordable, flexible for me to get it. And secondly, just lowering the pain points. We've always had this thing that this home loan is a once in a lifetime event. The home is a once in a lifetime event. Often the loan is something to be stressed out. There is co-borrowers, guarantors, milte hain. Most people, including myself, find a home loan document quite intimidating. Just a number of pages, signatures. I mean, it doesn't always have to be this way. So if we can bring these two things together, we believe that our future lies in helping home ownership increase, making it easier to buy a home. Is there any additional help that we need? Is there as an industry or at least as a company do we look at? We can't think of any. Whether it is the subsidies, whether it is the push, whether it is the thrust on housing for all. I think from an industry perspective, we have what we need. We look forward to building, stronger and together, whether it's developer partners, local governments. So we look forward. We are products. We are COVID babies, so to speak. Our launch was first delayed because of COVID 1.0. We had a bit of a rude stop to our progress in COVID 2.0. Hopefully, God willing, there won't be a COVID 3.0. and that we can build from here. So we look forward with lots of hope. The only thing that we are scared of is the things that we cannot control, that a new variant comes by despite everyone around us being vaccinated. If that is a cause for worry and that disrupts business, that would be something we would be fearful of, beg your pardon. But other than that, we are very hopeful for the future. So I hope this helps, and look forward to the rest of the session. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mr. Shah. I believe Ravi Aggarwal ji would be the happiest person to hear you, Ravi ji. He has suggested some wonderful, EMI options and way to, attract the buyers, especially in terms of making the house or buying a home more attractive. Sir, really appreciate your bullish approach and considering the growth in the sector. You have highlighted the pains, and at the same time, very few people do this, sir. Suggested perfect innovative treatment for the same. In the same direction, friends, now, thank you, Mr. Shah. Now, friends, please welcome Shri D.S. Tripathi ji. He is Managing Director and CEO of Aadhar Housing Finance Limited. Tripathi Saab, 39 years of commercial banking experience, 8 years stint in housing finance industry. Sir, what blessings do you have for this sector for the years to come, sir? Please.
Thank you, Himanshu, and thank you very much, ASSOCHAM, for having me on this panel. I'm very happy to be among the esteemed panel member, Ravi, Grover, and Manish. I think they have set the very good tone and they have explained very well what is going to happen. I would like to just start one thing, that COVID 1.0 or 2.0, it has taken a lot from all of us, but it has given too much of us to become very strong. Whatsoever we have lost, but I think in last about 18 months, be it the government, be it we individual, we have the company, we have developed a lot of things to face the COVID and make it a new normal. Whatever the groundwork government has done through Atmanirbhar Bharat 1.0 to latest being 4.0, and the various measures announced by the government and RBI from May 2020 onward till now, I think these all measures are going to create this economy very robust. Whether COVID or no COVID, this has to be normal. And that's why I am very bullish that the real estate sector is having a brightest future going forward, not because that something great is that, because it is one among top 3 sectors out of 14 important sectors contributing to the economy. We have no choice, whether it is commercial real estate, hospitality, logistic, housing, whatever it may be, it has to grow. But there are certain dimensions to it. When we talk of the housing, I will touch upon only housing because I think Mr. Grover has already taken commercial real estate very nicely. When you talk of the housing, we need to understand whether demand is going to be static or demand is going to rise. Housing for all 2022 is more or less going to be completed in 6-7 months from now. We might miss a little bit, but it is not a housing for all is going to end on March 22 because the demand for housing is growing. It is a dynamic. If you look into the RBI report of September 19, securitization policy they gave, they mentioned that there are 45 million housing requirement is for economically weaker section, 50 million is for the low income group, and 5 million for the HIG. And total requirement of the housing loan is going to be 57 lakhs crore. And every organization, every KPMG, they are predicting that the huge requirement of housing. So now when we talk of housing, please, we understand that it is not confined to top 8 cities, which in most of the report you will get. The top 8 cities have now expanded not to 50, it has gone to 200. 200 cities are the micro market. They are offering roughly about 87% of the housing requirement. Another thing which as a developer and as a lender, we both need to understand whatever the business we are, if we are in the prime segment, you are the mid segment, whatever business we are, we need to understand what is the demand of the customer is. In fact, latest, if you go to CIBIL report, 60% of the value-wise disbursement takes place for the loan up to 35 lakhs rupees. That is means 45 lakh rupees property cost. And 90% is by the volume. And if we go further dissect, if we go up to 15 lakh rupees loan, the 20% of the housing loan disbursement every year is below 15 lakh rupees loan. So this needs to be very properly understood, that where the demand is there. So now the demand from top cities is moving to the periphery of the city, are 30, 40, 50 kilometers, 70 kilometers from the city center, so that people want a bigger house after pandemic and they want to commute from there to the workplace. Ravi mentioned about the green housing. Green housing, lot of the global lenders, they are giving a huge facilities to all of us at the lower rate if we are funding the green housing. Therefore, the green housing construction has to come from the developers, and government of India has to provide it some much more incentive. NHB and all they are giving, and we as a lender, we give 25-50 basis point rent interest reduction on the green housing also. This is all very important, which I wanted to tell you. There is a huge requirement of the housing, not confined to the bigger cities, but now it is moving to the across the countryside. And as a developer, if we have to stop the unorganized development of the country, we need to see that the housing are available for 15 lakh, 20 lakh, 35 lakhs, 5 crore, 10 crore, whatever it amount may be. But when the demand is coming from 35, 45 lakh houses more, there has to be supply. Otherwise, affordability, whatever the model you have, having 3,000, 4,000 EMI in the beginning, and the customer shift to the house and then increase the EMI because his rent payment will be stopped, that will not improve the affordability to buy a house. A person is getting 10 lakhs rupees income, he can't take loan more than 40 lakhs rupees. That needs to be understood by all of us. And couple of good measures which government has taken, supply side intervention, demand side. I think ASSOCHAM has to request government that after March 22, if possible, those intervention to continue. One very important intervention which RBI took, that up to that they have done away with the earlier dispensation of risk weight for the lender, where the loan amount as well as the LTV both were considered. Now the lenders can go up to 90% of the loan amount. Then the borrower or customer can get a more loan amount without having his more fund involved in that. Earlier, for a loan of 75 lakhs and above, he was required to take only 75% LTV. Lenders were not allowed. The Reserve Bank of India has permitted it, but that is applicable up to March 22. So that's one part. I think if it is further extended, that will take care of the bigger loan requirement of those who are not having sufficient margin money. Second, the government of India has done, when the property prices are not going up and the circle rate was high and the agreement value was lower, they allowed 20% to be discounted, so that the income tax implication is not coming for the loan up to 2 crore rupees. That scheme is up to June 2021 only. I think governments be requested to extend that scheme also till the property price and circle rates are aligned together. These two things are very important. Coming to the interest rate scenario, agreed, this is the lowest interest scenario is there. I think we all wish that if this interest rate scenario continues for a couple of years more, Reserve Bank of India has been very kind enough to continue with the repo rate at 4. They have not changed it, but there is a possibility that after March 22 that might change because of the inflationary pressure. So though the demand in the market will continuously be not for today, but for next 20 to 25 years. As Manish mentioned, GDP penetration is low. Not only that, your urbanization by 2030 is going to be 40%. 60 crore people will live in the cities only. In that situation, you will need more and more houses of a different category. The interest rate is an important play. Affordability, of course, depend on the person's income, which gradually keeps on moving up. Whatever the my developer community and the RBI and the government can provide some support, that is most welcome. That is important. That's why, and technology, I think this is a very important point all of you have touched. Growth, investment, and innovation, these three things are very important. Now, house is not only having a roof, house is having some sort of a good experience, which Manish mentioned. So I am fully with him that the interest rate, benign interest rate for the housing loan need to continue. From lender side, I will tell you, this frenzy that all public sector bank, private sector bank, HFCs, they are all for full thing to go for the housing loan only. Their housing loan is one of the important segment that is going to continue in view of the opportunities available in this sector. But benign interest rate, the LTV which RBI has done, and a PMI scheme is further extended because the low income group and EWS, the affordability is one of the most important factor that needs to be considered. As regards from government side, that we mentioned, if FAR is increased, probably the green housing will get a good fillip into that only. So my point is that today the low property prices, low interest rate, they are going to push the housing demand, and housing sector will grow. And I hope that whatever the growth we have seen before before September 18, that is going to be coming back. And but one thing is certain, the various intervention which government has done in every sector, that is going to definitely enhance the income of the people. As a lender, we are bullish. We are not conservative in that. The only thing that affordability of the customer, that can be met with the property prices. And if the property prices has to come down, probably the land which we have to get, that should come cheap. And if the government of India, which is the maximum depository of the land, find a way to give the land at cheaper rate for you to construct the houses of 35 lakh rupees or 25 lakh rupees, that would be great. Affordable housing in partnership, SignatureGlobal is very heavily in that affordable housing partnership. If that scheme is extended where there is a zero tax holiday applicable till 2022, if it's further extended, I think the housing sector will see a big boost from all of us. So it is not a joint venture alone from the developer, the government, the regulator, Reserve Bank of India, NHB, and as a lender, we all should come forward in this, and then only this housing sector will continue to grow. And this sector is not only we are doing a charity for the people to giving houses at the low rate or low interest rate. This is going to give a big fillip to around 250 other industries. The Indian economy will automatically grow, which is, I think one of the Secretary Housing mentioned that if 10 trillion economy is going to by 2030 and 10% GDP contribution come from the housing, that is really great. There are the predictions, there are the assessment by the various institutional bodies that $1 trillion is going to be the housing market by 2030. So I am very bullish. The future of housing is great, and government, bankers, housing finance company, and all of you, we will jointly work together to see that this future is for the country's future, and we must build up together. I will stop here.
Thanks, Tripathi ji, for keeping the sector's hope alive, covering various intrinsic aspects of the industry, specifically like affordability, technology, and your main focus was on policy making. Thank you, sir. And trust me, if something positive comes from a banker's perspective, it definitely spreads further positive dimension to the trade and creates a hope for various stakeholders. Thank you so much, sir. It was wonderful hearing you. Friends, JLL has been a perfect knowledge partner for our National Council on Real Estate for a long time. Before I invite Shri A. Shankar for his views on the sector from a consultant's perspective, we are pleased to release a report on real estate markets in India, trends and prospects, jointly prepared by JLL and ASSOCHAM. I request the IT team to kindly release the report, and then we will invite Mr. Shankar for his deliberation. Please. Can we have sir, though all the participants would be on mute, but on this release, I'll clap on behalf of everyone, and the panelists here may clap. This is a wonderful report. I guess Mr. Shankar will give a brief of this report. And Mr. Shankar, you are heading the strategic consulting and valuation business of West Asia. As a consultant, you are in touch with financial institutions, developers, buyers, and various stakeholders like the government and many other organizations. It will be an honor to hear you. Over to you, Mr. Shankar.
Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot for this opportunity. Hope I'm audible and my video is on. Give me a thumbs up. Yes, perfect. Thank you. First of all, on behalf of JLL, I would like to thank ASSOCHAM and the key members out here for giving us an opportunity to be part of this event as knowledge partners. We all know that JLL, we've been tracking this market over a lot of years, globally and nationally, all the asset classes in real estate. And this particular report would cover primarily on residential, coupled with many other factors, which drives this important topic today, which we are talking about, is the changing dynamics in the real estate market. So my next 5 to 10 minutes is going to be on dissecting the entire discussion into 5 or 6 parts. And I would also cover some of the aspects which we covered in our study, which has been jointly released by ASSOCHAM in this particular event. We are thankful for that. Maybe I'll give high-level key takeaways from that report also in the next 5 to 10 minutes time. So as I was mentioning, I think if you want to bisect the entire episode, the changing dynamics in the last 3 to 4 years time, I could bifurcate into different segments, maybe in timelines basis. One is pre-COVID, maybe 2016 to 2019. Next, during COVID. Then pre-COVID, maybe pre-second wave, then post-second wave. Now, no, I think we are coming out of all of that, hopefully into a next segment, which is the post-COVID scenario. If you look at the pre-COVID session, that is year 2016 to 2019, real estate sector gained momentum, especially in 2019 after 2 or 3 years of disruption by demonetization, GST, RERA, NBFC crisis, brought in a lot of transparency and efficiency in the system. And we were all looking out for 2020 to be an excellent year for the sector as a whole. But however, we know that pandemic hit us. We went into a crisis, and the real estate sector displayed a kind of a downturn, but came out remarkably resilient manner. Then came during COVID, the residential sector especially predicted to be the last to recover, bounced back very quickly, more than expected. And this was driven primarily by a lot of initiatives, by low home loan rates, reduced stamp duty in some of the states, discounts from developers, pent-up demand coming in. On top of that, very stable prices resulted in encouraging sales in the second half of 2020, which had recovered to more than about 50% of pre-COVID volumes witnessed in 2019. So, I mean, we recovered during that particular year is about 50%. Then came the second wave. Again, we went back, and the sentiments were very poor. The housing market was expected to bounce back, but suddenly there was some negative sentiments. But still, there was some amount of positive buyer sentiment towards mid of 2020 and also in first quarter of 2021. The residential market continued an upward trajectory sales, I think to the tune of 17%, while the new launches increased by about 27%. However, the shift is mostly impacted after that by the second half of March, derailing the entire growth. However, the impact of second wave was very much limited when compared to the first wave. The first wave of COVID restricted residential sales, which dropped to about 60 to 61% quarter on quarter in Q2 2020, but in the second wave, which only impacted to an extent of about 23 to 24% only. So that was good from a residential standpoint. But in year 2021, where we are right now, maybe after the second wave, the economic activity began picking up pace, especially in June, July. Now with the second wave coming to an end with phased reopening of economy. This was backed by a lot of this vaccination initiatives by the government with good real GDP growth expected at about 9.5% in the financial year 2021-22. The new launches of more than 35,000 units were witnessed every quarter on quarter in 2019 to 2020. I mean, between that period. But it decreased to about 23,000 in the peak, the COVID era. The new launches are also expected to go up in the next couple of quarters. A lot of developers looking at launching new projects to monetize their land banks, the interest rates coming down, the interest levels from the end customers picking up. The residential sector was showing some kind of a resilience now and compared to the first wave. And so what it means is that I think we are getting into a phase which I call it as the post-COVID scenario. The post-COVID scenario is going to be not completely different, but there is going to be good amount of impact. Or I think it is important as professionals, developers, various stakeholders in this room to adopt to the various learnings which we have gained over the period of time. I think the significance of some of the trends, I think I will pick up some of the key takeaways from our report one by one. One is the significance of owning a home to avoid the uncertainties of living in a rented accommodation is picking up. So hence, a lot of customers are coming forward to go in for a new home. The need for a tangible asset that offers stability in crisis, coupled with remote working trend, will continue to drive sales. Moreover, we might even see a reversal in trends like developers launching large size homes, because somebody was commenting that now there is a requirement of additional room, maybe a study room, a study part or work area. So I think the interest level is moving towards owning a larger homes, which means that yet it should be affordable. Today, larger homes are not affordable, yet it should be affordable. So hence, people tend to move little away from the cities, and the preference towards going out and commuting may no longer be the most active or the preferred or critical factor to decide a home. People might be willing to travel more because of work from home options available, and hence larger homes at affordable location far away from cities are most preferred in the post-COVID scenario. There will also be an increased focus on some of the aspects like health and wellness, coupled with the hygiene element as part of the development is going to come in as a big way. Additionally, developers are also completely aligned with these kind of trends which are catching up, and some of the developers with whom we've been associated are clearly changing their design, changing their planning to accommodate the customer preference. Today, customer preference is dominating the decision making within the developers and the project. So some of the elements which are coming up in the recent past is that apartments with balconies, open spaces are being preferred. This is also outcome of our particular study, which has also been released just now. The carpet area of the apartment has moved up the decision-making ladder, while connectivity to office, as I was mentioning, no longer dictate the home purchase decisions. So increased attractiveness to suburban areas, not only near the cities, and also an emergence of tier 2 and tier 3 cities and the importance of them, and people trying to move out to these tier 2 and tier 3 cities, while some of the IT companies, some of the occupiers today are looking at moving out from these major cities towards tier 2 and tier 3 cities. I think somebody commented that as well. I think now it is an opportunity for us to explore not only in these major 8 cities. I think the opportunity lies outside these 8 cities in all tier 2 and tier 3 cities, more than 50 to 100 cities in all. Already there's a increased preference from the end users who wants to buy a home. There is an increased preference, also very important, willingness to pay more for a developer with a track record. And Ravi ji also highlighted that today the entire industry is becoming more professionalized, matured. I think structural reforms within the real estate in the last few years had weeded a lot of these smaller, unorganized players in this market, which means that home buyers' preference towards brand, well-established developers are becoming significant in this particular market, especially post-COVID. It is going to drive the entire real estate market in India. Also, from a developer standpoint, today we are witnessing many of the developers are adopting to technology, which is the need of the hour. Digitization in their organization is happening in a big way. They're adopting to digital marketing, which is becoming the prime channel to market their properties and generate leads. Property videos becoming a prime importance. The change in the way the site visits are done, even though site visits are very important, the physical site visits will continue to be an important part of home buying process, but still there are alternatives how to structure the site visits. And as I was mentioning earlier, now all these lockdown restrictions coming out, being eased out. Now I think we have a bright future, especially in the post-COVID scenario. All other asset classes, not only the residential, office is transforming. Somebody commented on the hybrid spaces are coming in big way. Pharma, FMCG, medtech, e-commerce occupiers are becoming an important integral part of the office market. Even though there is a kind of a loss of demand due to work from home, maybe 5 to 12%, but still there are new occupiers who are filling in that kind of demand. Also, some of the design changes in the offices, all of them are coming in. Industrial segment, which is a good opportunity, great opportunity for India from a manufacturing standpoint, is adopting to automation, robotics. Hence, the need for space is changing. Also, the demand for cold storage, urban logistics coming in a big way. The entire industrial manufacturing and logistics segment is going to have a massive change over a period of time, especially post-COVID scenario. Retail and hospitality, we all know most impacted. Hospitality is coming back because of the revenge travel which would happen in the post-COVID scenario. And also the retail. I think the positioning of retail spaces is changing drastically, and we need to wait and watch how the retail spaces are going to be created, especially one side, the post-COVID scenario, one side we have the e-commerce coming in a big way. The other side, there is a huge demand, again, being generated through e-commerce from an urban logistic hub. So I think retail malls and retail spaces are going to be viewed completely different, not just shopping. I think it is going to be beyond that. Some of the emerging trends from a social standpoint, we all know that the household size is reducing. The increase in working age population is one important factor where India is encashing on. We all know that India is one of the youngest nations in the world with a median age of 28, 29, and it is going to go up for some more time, a decade or so. And also the growing income levels of household, even though because of this COVID, there's been a huge amount of it, but post-COVID scenario, we are going to bounce back very quickly compared to any other nation, I think, because we have a huge demand, especially for the affordable housing segment, by increasing home purchase affordability by all of these financial institutions coming in with an attractive proposition for the end users. And also, again, if you look at the total mortgage to GDP ratio, that is an indicator to assess a market or a country, how the mortgage is penetrated into that country. India, I think, is about 11%, whereas the mature markets like UK and USA is about more than 80%. Even China, for that matter, is about 20%. So I think there's a huge opportunity there for the mortgage market to penetrate in the affordable housing. And also, we have the lowest penetration, in fact, in the mortgage finance market in India. Also, non-availability of cheaper and long-term finance was a concern. Now, I think with this coming in of a lot of financial institutions, I think that is being negated. I think it's up to the private sector to focus on, primarily they've been always focusing on high-end luxury residential. I think this is the time where they need to focus on affordable housing, not only on the cities which we are talking about across India, all tier 2 and tier 3 cities of India, where the housing shortage is the highest. And also very important is to create a kind of a residential development to cater to all spectrum of population. Today, many of these developments are focusing on one class of population. I think going forward, post-COVID scenario, it is going to be more inclusive, sustainable development is the need of the hour. And many times in today's discussion, people talked about green buildings. I think what we can pass on to our next generation is to have the sustainable world for the next generation, with public-private partnership coming in, focusing on inclusive growth, which will make an equitable, environmentally sustainable, and very transparent market, which will be beneficial to the entire population of our country. So with those words, I stop here. I can step in whenever any points to be discussed later. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Mr. Shankar, for a comprehensive deliberation, specifically highlighting the present scenario and the future prospects. The views expressed in the report are really enlightening. I could go through them while you were sharing your deliberation, and trust me, friends, it's very useful. I request the IT team to share it with everyone the way it is possible, so that everyone can be benefited with this. Now, friends, we have heard developers, bankers, advisors. Let us now shift to something technical, for which we have today with us Mr. Sudhir Aggarwal, who is Managing Director of Victory One Group. Mr. Aggarwal, we welcome you in the today's seminar. Sir, you head a team of architects, designers, engineers, chartered accountants, business management experts. Seems like you've designed a nice bouquet of professionals, sir. Please share how your team takes the sector in the recent times to come.
Yeah, hi, Himanshu. I think I'm audible to all, right?
Yes, sir. You're audible. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Hi to all my friends. And it is a very lovely session that we are discussing. You know, in such a crisis, we are discussing all that, and senior people from the industry are, willing to share the dice and put all the things forward. I tell you, I come from the technical side, wherein, unlike many, I am facing the day-to-day issues, and which will, help, my ideas may help in changing the dynamics of real estate in near future. These are my personal views, out of the experience that I gather, in last few years. See, I tell you, nowadays when we construct house, we should be ready to give the fully loaded, affordable houses. What I mean to say, the houses, see, as on date, air conditioning is not a luxury, it is a necessity. We should be providing air conditioners in all bedrooms. We should be giving wardrobes, modular kitchens, lights and fans as the basic thing in the house. Cutting down to our profits, we do bulk buying. Suppose the cost of the all these fixtures, if my customer do all these fixtures, it costs around 250 rupees. And when we do a bulk buying, it costs us 125 rupees or 130 rupees, as we are doing in all our projects. So that helps, the customer to, it's a hassle-free process where he gets a fully fitted house. And we have to eat our profits. We have to cut down our profits by this 130 rupees, and we should not be charging extra for all this. So one, the houses should be fully loaded, even in affordable housing. And I mean to say affordable housing means 35, 40 and 45 lakh rupees. Secondly, we should design the homes in such a way where my end user is happy to enter the house without any much of hassles of getting this thing, that thing. It should be fill it and forget it. Now start your motorcycle and run it. It should be that. Secondly, the housing societies should have a better grade of maintenance. See, in COVID times, we had seen that the people are inside their houses. So the housing complex should have very good. They should have good space in the club where they could consider that as their mini office. Thirdly, the houses. See, I'm telling you out of my experiences, and some of these may feel silly to few. We have provided a small room which is called a study room or a office room. The people are working in IT firms, and mostly our TG is working in IT firms or work from home processes is on, and it will be continued for next 2 years or so, which I feel. So we should provide a mini study room or a office space. Fourth, the housing complex should have a commercial space which is mandatory for routine utilities like grocery, vegetables, etc. See, nowadays all the housing complex have their own commercials, but we should make sure as developer that these grocery shops, these vegetable shops are run. In case they are not being run, they are not active. So we should take our initiative to run those shops. Fifth, the infrastructure to reach that housing society should get improved. What I mean to say, the roads, the street lighting, the local commuting system for which the state government comes into picture, and we should be focusing in regular meetings with the state government, with the administration, with the respective authorities, respective municipal corporations, that the roads, street lights and the commuting system should improve. So these are few points which it's already 5:30 and I will not take much time. So my main points for the fully loaded houses, the maintenance facility should be good, the housing complex should have the minimum basic commercial needs, and infra should be good. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Aggarwal, for your views on the topic set for today, specifically covering the intrinsic technical aspects, which I think every developer here would feel that that's a basic pain and which needs to be relieved. Thank you so much. Friends, now we have someone who has probably touched every aspect of real estate, may it be housing, commercial, hospitality, healthcare, retail, education, property management, and whatnot. We are pleased to welcome Shri Akshay Taneja, Managing Director, TDI Infratech Limited. Hello, Mr. Taneja. We welcome you on this platform, and we had been eagerly waiting to hear you. Mr. Taneja, I personally have seen that you have been a trendsetter for whatever you do. Having set the trends in all aspects of the section, what would be your key suggestions to our members today? Mr. Taneja?
Himanshu ji, I think he will be joining back in few minutes. So you can go to the next speaker while we wait for Mr. Taneja.
I think he has joined, sir. So shall we?
Yeah, he joined, and in between he had some issue. So we are getting him back. Yeah, he is there. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Great, sir.
So, glad to be present in front of, all you, my seniors actually, because I'm fairly new in the industry. But ASSOCHAM has invited me to speak on the dynamics of real estate and the changing face of the industry. So I would like to start with a little bit of background about myself. I represent a company called TDI Infratech. We are based out of New Delhi, headquartered in New Delhi, and our townships span across North India, from Kundli in Haryana to Panipat in Haryana, Mohali in Uttar Pradesh, so in Delhi, Gurgaon. We are present in almost 10 cities in commercial and residential. So, in terms of townships, in terms of commercial establishments, we have our flagship metro station in collaboration with NDMC in Nehru Place by the name of Epicuria. So, if you all are from Delhi, I'm sure you must have visited there someday or the other. When it comes to real estate, I feel everyone's talking about first wave, second wave, the undesired but potential third wave that is looming upon us. I feel this all the waves have taught us a lot in terms of uh, humanity, which reflects upon the sustainability in every sector, be it real estate or be it your own lifestyle. And this was a topic of discussion before the entire pandemic as well, and we were really pushing for it when the entire concept of smart cities came along, but it was not being taken very seriously, I would say. But since this entire scenario has come upon us, everyone is now looking upon as a sustainable development as a low-hanging fruit, which is going to reap the biggest benefits to us all. I mean, that is what the school of thought that I come from. And sustainability it comes at a cost. There is a price involved to sustainability. And with time, in the past 5 years, the advancement of technology has enabled youths like me to actually get that change and to convince our board members, our shareholders, our seniors in the company to let us make that change. Be it I'll give you some examples of how we are going towards a more sustainable development in our projects. From using in construction, we use fly ash bricks. There are precasted slabs, so there is no on-site construction. There's less pollution. The labor that is staying on site, obviously, you can say as much as you claim, but there cannot be on-site labor hutments made with proper sanitization and defecation. So we have been able to reduce that by almost 50%. Some things you cannot remove from the site, but as much as you can, it is going to take us a long way. So from construction to the energy consumption by installing solar, to water management by installing rainwater harvesting. In our townships, we have probably the biggest STPs that one can imagine of 5,000 kiloliters per day, because we have 1,500 acres of township, of approximately 50,000 people staying there already in one of the townships. So All these combined factors will reap us benefits, not to our mother nature, but also eventually on our top and bottom lines. Because as one of you people was saying that uh, the new customer, they want to go with the track record, a developer who has a track record of developing and delivering. So once you start delivering a sustainable product which resonates with the youth of the country, because currently the buyers are all, you know, growing younger and younger day by day. It's only the earlier it was 35 plus who was buying. Now it's 25 to 35, the age group people who can now afford to actually buy a house for themselves, their first home. Apart from the natural effect of a father having two sons and having to sell their house to give it to the two sons, it's happening automatically now because people are more eligible due to low interest rates and due to no other reason because they want to live separately away from the cluster communities that uh, house in the top 8 city of the country. So they want to shift to tier 2, tier 3. With that, the price range reduces and they are able to afford the house. So the younger age group which do not have a big bank account, they are able to go and buy their first home now. And this set of people, primarily from 25 to 35, 36, 37, to the wrong side of 30s, they all are counted as the youth. And they all want to get to technology advanced communities, sustainable townships, and developments around them, which consist of horticulture, LED lighting, solar panels, and any service that you can imagine of being in the West. So on the real estate front, in terms of development and the new technology that are being used, this is how we are pushing it as ASSOCHAM, as CREDAI, as Wiki, as CCI. We all come together to on different platforms like a very well curated platform today. We come together to speak about these things, uh, and also we expect a lot from the government. So we keep making our advances towards them, and they have been very kind to us, especially by coming out with so many amnesty schemes in the past year or year and a half or so, about be it the Swahim fund that came out, the interest amnesty scheme that came out, now the lowering of the MIG schemes that came out, which lower the interest rates for the low income groups. And now going forward, we also wanting to extend these schemes further for at least the next 2 years, because the housing for all agenda is not yet completed, and we are behind any government which is in power of giving us leverage of delivering that to all of the entire country basically. So I hope the push needs to be more inclusive. It's a message from nature that we are now shifting towards tier 2 and tier 3, where the population is where most of the country resides. It's 35% which stays in top 20 cities, and the rest 65% stays in tier 2 and tier 3, and then to the displaced, the remote corner villages. So it is our job, it is our duty and responsibility as being real estate players for the past 20, 30 years to deliver that to the society and to the country, and we shall do that with support from all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Taneja. Thank you so much, Mr. Taneja, for your views on highlighting the need of the hour, what we need for the today's generation, specifically maybe for the millennials, what we call, and then creating sustainable development. Thank you so much. Friends, amongst us, we have Mr. Harmeet, who is presently co-founder and managing director of Rescorp Reality. Let's quickly take his views also on this subject. Mr. Harmeet.
Good evening, Himanshu. Thank you so much. It's absolutely interesting hearing all the participants, and again, big thank you to ASSOCHAM for having me over. I've been associated with them for more than a decade now, and they somehow seem to like bearing my views, and I appreciate that. Having said that, the advantage I have is hearing all the participants, and then it becomes much more easier to kind of culminate into one big pot of stuff that I can actually put forth. My views in terms of how real estate is that today we are in a very, very dynamic situation, both in terms of the macro which COVID has hit, more also in terms of the ups and downs and the kind of things that we see on the economies. And going forward, as I see as a businessman, is that and I'm not painting a negative perspective. I'm simply saying, in a very realistic sense, that do not get into a strategy on your real estate which you feel what you see today is going to be the flavor for the next 5-6 years, because things are going to evolve. In my opinion, I do see commercial coming back eventually. I do not see a very long-term perspective in terms of work from home. It's something we're accommodating right now from a perspective of what the challenges that we faced over the last 14 months. But that doesn't mean commercial is totally out. As and when things will open up, commercial will come back in a big way. Coming to the point of residential, the aspect is we are sitting today at a point where the interest rates are at its lowest. There was a very valiant point that Mr. Shah made up, that the question is not about just the housing, what's the cost of the house. It's about the total process and how do we get, the entire value chain in terms of not only the process of how the house is being bought, but what's the actual cost that comes to the customer. So a lot of innovation needs to be done, not only just to the product level. A lot of innovation needs to be done to create and strengthen the value chain of the entire process of real estate. And I've been saying this not now, for the last 8 years, that sometimes the best way to do business is not to really go and rework your products. It's actually to rework your value chain. And we've seen in the last, and I've spent more than 2 decades in this business. I've heard a lot of participants. Let me be very clear. Way back in 2005-06, when I launched group housing projects, and they were fairly one of the largest in NCR. Trust me, we have all the amenities. We talked about integrated townships. We talked about community living. It had all the facilities that are being sold today. So we are just adapting to certain changes right now. But most of the facilities which are going in today have all existed in the last 15 years. So there is really not something out of the blue, the newest. I see that it's come up. They have existed. We've been selling it, and not only at the luxury quotient. Way back 11 years back, I was the guy who headed and launched one of, I think, the largest projects in NCR, 6,000 projects, 6,000 apartments in one single project. We had all amenities, and we had price points ranging from 15 lakhs going up to about 65 lakhs in that. So we catered to the nuances and the bandwidth of every customer in that. The clubhouse did not belong to somebody who was just 75 lakhs. He had the customer buying at 18 lakhs had an equal participation in the amenities within the project. So that's one point that I want to dwell on. The other part is that we talk about sustainability and all, and this is something which is close to what I've been saying for a very long time. Today, a lot of people, and there's a factor that the demand has come in Gurgaon. If I pick up a Gurgaon market, is predominantly because of the outcome of an emotional quotient and the way COVID has hit people. If you pick up Delhi specifically, because it's cluttered, the development over the last 25 years has been absolutely unscientific, absolutely nonsensical in my opinion. The density where it should be, the densities have gone over the board. You have people living on each other's head, and the chances of breeding and a pandemic aggression into this kind of a master planning of a city is bound to happen. To that extent, you still controlled in terms of your FAR, in terms of FSI in Gurgaon, which allows you certain more leverage in terms of how you're creating and you're controlling your density. So I also feel a large part of that is a movement into projects where you're not so crowded. Yes, there are still large projects in Gurgaon or even, so to speak, in Noida. But end of the day, the fact of the matter is we as developers, as people who are aligned to this business, as stakeholders, we need to start really looking at not just the development. We need to step back and for a change start looking at how the master planning is being done. it's great to talk about great efficiencies and great green tech, great sustainability within your four walls. But that four wall has little value if everything outside that four wall is collapsing. Whether you, and we see it year on year when the rains come in, we see with the sewer water, we see it with electricity, things are changing, but that hampers the absolute quality and the perspective with which you're giving the houses. The whole feeling of owning that house in that place actually goes absolutely southwards. So my sense is, please start giving a little more thought in terms of how the city has to be planned rather than just the project which has to be planned. Thank you. I think that's my submission. I won't take more time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Harmeet ji. Trust me, your views are really practical and worthy. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Pleasure.
Friends, now I think the person for whom we have all been waiting since 4 o'clock, the time has come to welcome our keynote speaker for today, Shri Ravi Verma Sahib, former CMD of National Housing Bank and presently chairman of AU Small Finance Bank. Sir, we welcome you with folded hands and applause, though everyone is on mute, but had this been a physical gathering, sir, you would have got a standing ovation, I believe. You have such high personality. We welcome you, sir. Sir, you have led at the top and have been a policy maker, maybe for more than 3 decades. We have heard developers here, bankers here, consultants, technical advisors here. Sir, I come from Jaipur, and I really appreciate the role of your organization, both ways. One on the side of the developer and another side helping the buyers. So, I mean, your organization is funding the developers as well as the buyers, creating the entire supply chain for this real estate sector. Sir, it will be an honor to listen to you as a keynote speaker for today. I invite you, sir, for your deliberation, please.
Thank you, Himanshu, and a very good afternoon to everyone, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a pleasure to be here to share my thoughts and experiences with all of you. And I'm thankful to ASSOCHAM for having organized this and thought of me to be here. Well, I think we have quite a plate full from all the speakers who I've heard very, very intently and keenly. And I was very happy that many of the issues which has been kind of affecting or impacting the growth of housing or real estate, whether it's commercial or institutional or hospitality or residential, has been flagged in many ways. What I would suggest is I will just move a little away from those ideas, and I will put things in a little different way as the sector has evolved over a period of time till it hit the pandemic about 18 months ago, and which changed the whole world. But we're not sure still whether it has the change is permanent or it's temporary. And that's my feeling. Something which had been happening over the years, over ages, and which had got institutionalized, whether it was the behavior of individuals, the behavior of lenders, borrowers, the homeowners, the home seekers, and the industry at large. Is all that going to change through one stroke of pandemic, which has lasted till now, and I think the world is getting used to it also? Or is it actually a big change in everyone's life? Well, both sides of the stories have been told, and we hear about that. But I personally feel that a time of reckoning hasn't arrived yet, and I don't think we can very definitively or decidedly say that this is now a big turning point in the life of individuals, in the life of the sector, in the life of industry, and the way people are going to
live the way people are going to decide about their lives and their future. So let's take both ways. Even if it continues to come back to the same scenario, which we had about 18 months ago, and where we felt, so that's the housing as a product. I'll try and focus on housing, but land is a very important subject anyways. And there is competing demand on land, not only from residential sector, but from industries, from agriculture, from export industries, from hospitality industry, from hospitals. So there is competing demand on land. Now, how do you allocate? There is only a constant size of land which is available in the country and which has to be allocated to different uses, say residential, manufacturing, institutional, and agriculture, and the rest of it. So it depends on how the sectors perform. It depends on how competitive the sector is. The land is a factor of production. It's a very important factor in housing construction. It's a very important factor in real estate development. But it has to have other factors along with it to make it look very, I would say, attractive or competitive from the point of view of generating demand. So if there is a demand for housing, there will be demand for land, which has to be allocated for housing. If there is greater demand from the manufacturing, or the manufacturing sector is doing very well and contributing to GDP and employment and all that in a big way, then there would be allocation of land towards manufacturing. Manufacturing can't happen in the air. Residential can't happen in the air. There has to be land on which these factors have to sit. So as far as housing is concerned, as compared to other sectors, this is the most universal product. Housing is by far the most universal product, and it touches the lives of every individual at some point of time or the other. The demand for housing will always be there, and the demand for housing will continue to outstrip the supply. This is a given constant. The demand will always be more than supply. Supply will keep catching up, but demand will keep growing. That's a given. So as far as the industry's demand is concerned, it may get muted for some time, for some reason. For example, last say 1 year, 1.5 years, we have seen there has been muted demand for very, very obvious reasons. At times, there is muted demand for housing for other reasons too, when the interest rate is very high or the pricing is very high. So there are a number of factors which determine the demand. But as far as absolute demand is concerned, that will always be there and it will always remain high. Now, the question is, how do we gear up the institutions? How do we gear up the infrastructure? How do we gear up the policies? How do we gear up the regulations to be able to ensure that there is a constant supply of housing in this system to meet this demand? So that's very important. And I think we have made good progress on that, whether it's the government at the center or the state level, or it's the central bank, Reserve Bank of India, or banking industry overall. There are a number of other institutions which are de-risking the sector. This sector used to be, real estate and housing used to be treated as a very risky sector. It used to be perceived as a risky sector, and there are a number of risks which used to be counted by whether it's the lenders or the buyers or investors or even government for that matter. So at a very early stage, now the sector has evolved, but when it was at a very early stage, the banks themselves were very, 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 very loath in financing housing. Central bank wouldn't encourage lenders to provide housing because it was perceived to be a very risky sector. We have come a long way, and the sector has been de-risked through a number of institutions. Whether it's the borrowers who are there, who used to be considered as risky, today lenders are, in fact, they have developed their skills, they have developed their capacities. The government and the policymakers have given a very supportive framework for the lenders to lend to all segments of the population, even to the riskier segments who were considered risky earlier. But they have to have the knowledge, the skill, the capability, and experience to be able to handle the risk, which is in a way inherent in lending for housing, because it's a long-term housing. It's a long-term lending, And for a long term, anything can happen. Over a period of time, the prices can keep moving up and down. It can be very volatile. The interest rates, if we are on a moving interest rate basis, it's floating interest rate. The rates of interest can change. So anything can happen, which can impact the repayment capacity of the borrower, either genuinely or willfully. So that's something which the lenders have to build into their business model and ensure that the risk, they're able to recognize that risk, they're able to understand that risk, measure that risk, and price that risk. So those kinds of developments have happened, and as a result, today we see nearly about 5 to 6 lakh crores of lending happening every year by lenders, by all classes of banks and housing finance institutions. And we have today very happily noticing that the bank's presence in this sector has been very huge, and they account for nearly 70% of the total lending. So from a position where banks used to consider this sector as very risky, and they won't touch this sector with a barge pole, today the banks are competing with each other to lend for housing itself. No other sector but housing is considered to be as safe. So the whole cycle has gone full circle. So, and this is not going to stop because of the very fact that housing is a very robust industry. It will always remain in demand, and there have been a supportive policy framework. There have been supportive regulatory framework, and there is a good liquidity pipeline for the sector, which also improves affordability. So today, by virtue of the fact that when the constraint came of the pandemic, we saw a number of special windows opened up by the RBI, by the government, by RBI in terms of special liquidity scheme for the non-banking finance companies, for the housing finance companies, for small finance banks, government providing special, in fact, guarantee scheme, liquidity guarantee scheme for MSMEs, etc. So there has been a constant attention from the policymakers and the regulators to ensure that the sector doesn't suffer for want of either liquidity or for want of affordability. The rates of interest have been kept low, as all the speakers also have very correctly highlighted that today we have a repo rate of 4%. The RBI, it's historical, and I think it's going to continue. The outlook on this sector is very positive. Another aspect would be how do we further improve the competitiveness of the sector, and which is very important. The sector has to be competitive. Today, it is seen to be safe. The NPA level is low within reasonable limits, except for the pandemic period, which also saw a restructuring of the loans. It saw a moratorium on the repayments, which were very important factors, which actually helped the banks and the lending institutions for not classifying those loans as NPA, as a result of which the borrowers were also eased. So these are the factors which over the last 18 months, but otherwise we are coming out of those 18 months. And if we consider today that pandemic, COVID 2.0, 2.5 or COVID 3, the third wave, even if it's there, are we not much better prepared today? We came out of the earlier waves quite resilient and quite strong, and we have the advantage of learning, a very rich learning, which everybody got, so much so that it has got built into their flexible business models and their revenue models. They understand the risk, and no one is discounting that this will not happen again, but they're building it into their business model. And that's what we need to do as a rational businessmen, as rational decision makers, as rational buyers, as rational lenders and borrowers, and as rational builders. So as far as liquidity and affordability is concerned, I think that will continue to be available to the segment. The accessibility part of it, which is the people residing not only in cities or the metros, but also in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and we heard some of the speakers talking about that. The pandemic had definitely affected people's willingness and ability to come out of their areas of comfort, to come out of their comfort zones. For example, people migrating to cities and big towns for a job, we may not see that happen as much as it used to happen earlier. So there would be need for decentralized housing, housing at local levels. And during the pandemic also, there is a strong realization on the part of the people that housing would have saved their lives, housing would have saved their families, and that's an asset for which renewed aspiration is there amongst the people, not only as a shelter, but as an extreme need. So that is something which has got rekindled in the people. And we see on the back of this pandemic, due to pent-up demand and unsold inventory also, pent-up demand suddenly going up, it will start imposing itself on the sector, and we will see a sector bouncing back in a big way. It's not only residential, but even commercial. There would be, as a result of the pandemic, a work from home culture may continue, and that's also a given, but that's not going to change the whole world. It's quite likely that many people or the many companies, many employers will continue to engage people and allow work from home, with something which people have got used to, and which has its own benefits as well, both in terms of micro, that is individual life, as well as the society, or I would say the community or the city life. You'll see people maybe residing closer to their workplace, or so that they can even walk in times of need. But largely, people would even prefer being on the outskirts, being far away, if digital working or work from home is totally digitized. And for that, certain kind of infrastructural changes and modifications will be required. And I'm sure as we go along, looking at the trend and the pattern of people deciding, or the companies' policies, the response from the sector would be matching. So that's another area, but a lot of it will be driven by technology. You work from home on a large scale, which will need to have a kind of digital infrastructure, a huge bandwidth of that, which does not collapse. And so that will be a parallel infrastructure which will need to be built. Rather than having a highway for vehicles, you'll be having a highway for digital journeys. So that's something which will be, of course, at the macro level when we are talking about digital India, at the Honorable Prime Minister's statement, and the government is working on that. So that will be a big boost for housing and for change in the pattern of housing and the way people live and work. I quite appreciate the fact that some of the speakers, they mentioned about the blurring of the work life and the personal life. That blurring will be there, but then to keep that apart, there's plan for providing some kind of office space along with the residence. So that's a new model. That's something which is innovative, and I'm sure it will find a lot of takers in the system. So beyond that, we have a lot of stress on ease of doing business, which is again very important. And we have lenders, buyers, builders, brokers, and the regulators. So this is the whole ecosystem, and where we feel that the ease of doing business through digital intervention, through technology, is going to bring a lot of value, not only to the customers, but to the lenders, to the buyers, to the builders, to the government in terms of revenue as well, because the turnaround time will be much shorter. So that's something which we would be very keenly looking forward to, and with all the government's stress and emphasis on ease of doing business and digital India and housing for all and de-risking the sector, housing as a universal product. All this given, I think the outlook for the housing and broader construction industry is very, very positive. The construction includes commercial construction as well, and these account for they are the second largest employment generator in the country, and it's adding, as somebody mentioned, also about 11%. I mean, it's the mortgages is outstanding is about 11% of GDP, and the total outstanding is close to about 21 lakh crores. So that's it's not enough for India, because we still have a large housing shortage, and we still need funding. We need institutions, but we see the ability of the institutions, financing institutions, to lend to the individuals for the long-term loans and also to the builders and the construction agencies on the supply side. That has been going up and which has been giving a lot of confidence to all the stakeholders. Before I conclude, in fact, there'll be I don't want to miss out on a very important element in all this evolution of housing industry is the institutional infrastructure. Now, institutional infrastructure is the market infrastructure. Earlier times, the government was the sole provider of housing. Housing used to be treated as a social project, as a social product, as a good for community, and the government's concern for that. And the government agencies like public development authorities or housing boards or government itself as an employer used to provide housing to the people. Now we have seen a radical change in the outlook over a period of time, over the years. This job is to be provided by the market. And the government, knowing that the government's ability were limited, government's financials, fiscal capability were limited, and the housing shortage was growing, it's good that there has been a lot of market orientation in the housing finance industry, including the mortgage industry. So a lot of work has come to the institutions, specialized institutions, shifted from government as a provider of housing to market as a provider of housing. And this market comprises lenders, the builders, the the entire process of approval, sanctions, loans. Number of speakers spoke about the efficiencies which are required. The digital, end-to-end digital, not only on the lending side, but also on the construction side is required. Pandemic has taught us that a lot of things have to be contactless. So how do we digitize the structure or the visit of the people to the houses to see and select their dream house? How do we digitize the whole process of valuation, the whole process of initiation of the loans, loan origination, documentation, and all that stuff? That will multiply the housing production. That will multiply the number of loans which the lenders can give. That will bring about greater accuracy and greater confidence amongst the regulators. It will improve compliance to all the regulations. So it'll be win-win for all the parties, for all the stakeholders. And today, I think we couldn't be asking for more. The amount of support that the government and the central bank and the banking industry are providing to housing without, in fact, batting an eyelid, if I may say so, is something very amazing. And that's something which is very, very encouraging. And in days to come, we are sure that this interest in housing amongst all the stakeholders will grow. And we are going to see, in fact, better days on the back of the pandemic. Even I would say that even if there is a wave, our learning has been so robust and has made us so resilient that the economy and the sector will be able to withstand that. And we need to have flexible models. It can't be a straight-jacketed for one kind of a structure. If we have flexible models, we can immediately, or we have to be agile, and we can adjust to a new environment, to a new situation, to the new call of the market. Environment is important. That's becoming another important stakeholder. That's a very, very important partner in this entire process of evolution of construction industry, whether it's residential or commercial. So all the stakeholders have to keep in mind that environment is going to be a very important partner in this. Now, whether it's at the approval process, the checklist has to be there. The construction side, we have a number of institutions who are approving, but that's going to be a key and a dominant partner. So with this, I will end. I just thought I'll take this opportunity to flag some important issues and share my thoughts and experience with all of you. I personally have a very positive outlook on the housing industry. And as we go along, I'm sure the supply side will gear up to meet the increasing demand. Thank you very much, Himanshuji, and thank you very much, ASSOCHAM.
Thanks, sir. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom, especially the demand-supply proposition in the sectors suggested by you. You've covered various risks and their relative respective solutions. Your positive outlook for us being prepared for future and various aspects which shall facilitate the growth of the sector are really appreciable. Thanks for joining this webinar, sir. Now, friends, I'll invite Shri D.S. Rajora Sahab, Assistant Secretary General ASSOCHAM, for his concluding remarks and word of thanks.
Thank you so much, Himanshu ji. it's a great privilege for me to propose a very hearty vote of thanks to Mr. R.P. Verma, former CMD, National Housing Bank and Chairman, AU Small Finance Bank. We are grateful to you, sir, for being with us at this important discussion. Today's discussion for the last 2 hours have covered number of aspects of real estate sector, be it residential, commercial, technical, financial, bankers, consultants, advisors of different segments of the real estate sector. And it is great to learn that most of the eminent speakers have given a positive outlook for the sector in the time to come. I also thank Mr. Ravi Aggarwal, co-founder and MD Signature Global Group, Mr. Amit Grover, Executive Director, DLF Limited, Mr. Manish Shah, MD and CEO, Godrej Housing Finance, Mr. D.S. Tripathi, MD and CEO, Aadhar Housing Finance, Mr. A. Sankar, Head, Strategic Consulting and Valuation Advisory, JLL, Mr. Sudhir Agarwal, MD, Victory One Group, Mr. Akshay Taneja, MD, TDI Infratech Limited, Mr. Harmeet Chawla, MD, Rescorp Realty, and of course, Mr. Himanshu Goyal, partner Ramanand Goyal and Company, and our very, very valued participants, those who have been listening to us for more than 2 hours, these deliberations, they have been really benefited with lot of information today. And that is why I thank each and everyone, all the eminent panelists, participants, the moderator, the chief guest, and all our important members of ASSOCHAM. Thanks a lot for everyone. My grateful thanks on behalf of ASSOCHAM. We will be back again with another subject, another topic after a gap of 1 or 2 months. I grateful thanks to everyone. Thank you so much.